The crystal chandelier above our table cast dancing shadows across the white tablecloth as I raised my champagne glass. My son Jake smiled back at me, his own glass catching the light. After 40 years of building my logistics company from a single truck to a nationwide fleet, I'd finally sold it for $63 million. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration of family success and new beginnings. As Jake and his wife Melissa stood to join other couples on the dance floor, I watched them sway to the gentle jazz melody. That's when a figure approached my table. The security guard leaned close, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, I saw your son pour something into your orange juice while you were greeting the waiter." My world tilted. 15 minutes later, I excused myself, claiming sudden dizziness, and left the restaurant, my untouched juice still on the table. The morning sun streaming through my bedroom windows in my Connecticut estate felt different now. Everything felt different. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7 times as I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to make sense of what had happened. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my phone to call Dr. Harrison, my physician of 20 years. "Richard, I need you to run some tests," I said when he answered. "Complete toxicology panel, and I need it done quietly." His voice carried concern. "Bud, what's going on? Are you feeling all right? Just come by the house this morning. Bring whatever you need to draw blood. I'll explain when you get here." After ending the call, I scrolled through my contacts until I found Samuel Wright. We'd met at a charity golf tournament 5 years ago. Former FBI, now running his own private investigation firm. If anyone could help me understand why my son would try to poison me, it would be Samuel. The doorbell rang at 8:30 sharp. Dr. Harrison stood there with his medical bag, gray eyebrows furrowed with worry. I led him to my study, the same room where Jake and I used to work on model airplanes when he was young. "Someone may have slipped something into my drink last night," I explained as he prepared the needles. "I need to know what." Richard's hands paused. "Should we involve the police?" "Not yet. Just run the tests. Full spectrum. And Richard, this stays between us." He nodded, drawing several vials of blood. "I'll put a rush on it. Should have results by tomorrow afternoon." Samuel arrived an hour later. At 62, he still carried himself like the federal agent he'd once been. Sharp eyes that missed nothing, a quiet way of moving that made you forget he was there until he spoke. "Tell me everything," he said, settling into the leather chair across from my desk. I recounted the previous evening, watching his expression grow more serious with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back, fingers steepled under his chin. "The security guard. Did you get his name?" "Marcus. That's all I know. Young man, maybe 30. African-American, very professional. I'll track him down. We need his full account." Now, has Jake been acting differently lately? I thought back over recent months. He's been more interested in the business sale, asking about numbers, wanting to be present for meetings with the buyers. I thought he was just being supportive. "Anything else?" Questions about my will. Comments about making sure everything is properly arranged. Melissa suggested I should update it after the sale went through. Samuel pulled out a small notebook. "When did Jake marry Melissa?" 2 years ago. Met her in Vegas during some marketing convention. Whirlwind romance. They were married within 6 months. "Tell me about her." "Beautiful, charming. Says she works for a fashion magazine in Manhattan, though she's vague about which one. Always perfectly dressed, expensive tastes. Jake seems completely smitten." "I'll need to look into both of them." Quietly. "Can you think of any reason Jake would want to harm you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. My son. My only child. The boy I'd raised alone after his mother died when he was 12. "No. We've had our differences over the years, but nothing that would lead to this." Samuel stood. "I'll start immediately. In the meantime, be careful what you eat and drink. Only consume things you've prepared yourself, or from sealed containers you've opened. And Bud, consider installing some security cameras in your home, discreetly." After he left, I sat alone in my study, surrounded by photos of happier times. Jake's college graduation, His first day at the marketing firm he claimed to own. Our fishing trip to Alaska last summer. When had my son become a stranger? The call from Dr. Harrison came the next day at 3 in the afternoon. His voice was grim. "Bud, you need to come to my office. Now. Don't eat or drink anything else until you get here." The drive to his office felt endless. When I arrived, his nurse immediately showed me to his private office. Richard stood by the window, test results in his hand. Rohypnol, he said without preamble. Also known as the date rape drug. But that's not the worst part. There were also traces of digoxin, a cardiac medication. In someone without heart disease, especially at your age, the combination would have induced what appeared to be natural heart failure within 48 hours. My legs felt weak. I sank into the chair across from his desk. "You're saying if I'd finished that drink, you'd likely be dead by tomorrow night?" And without specific testing, it would have looked like a natural cardiac event. Elderly man stress from selling his company previous mild hypertension. No one would have questioned it. Jake knows about my blood pressure. I mentioned it at dinner last month when Melissa asked about my health. Richard set down the papers. "There's more. I ran a comprehensive panel. You have elevated mercury levels. Not acute poisoning, but consistent with chronic low-level exposure over several months. Have you been feeling more tired lately? Any memory issues?" I thought back. Yes, both. You said it was normal aging stress from the sale negotiations. These levels suggest otherwise. Someone has been poisoning you slowly, Bud. The restaurant incident wasn't the first attempt. It was an escalation. I left his office with bottles of chelation medication to address the mercury and strict instructions to document everything. On the drive home, I called Samuel. "We need to expand the investigation," I told him. "This has been going on for months." That evening, Maria, my housekeeper of 15 years, knocked on my study door. "Mr. Budd, I wasn't sure if I should mention this, but last week when you were at your lawyer's office, I saw Jake in here. He was taking pictures of papers on your desk with his phone." "Which papers, Maria?" "The ones from your desk drawer. Financial statements, I think. He put everything back exactly as it was, but I noticed because one page was slightly crooked. You know how I am about keeping your desk just so." I thanked her, my heart growing heavier. After she left, I opened the drawer. Bank statements, investment portfolios, the preliminary purchase agreement for the company. Everything someone would need to understand exactly how much I was worth. That night, I installed the hidden cameras myself. One in the study, another in the kitchen, a third in the living room where Jake and Melissa usually sat when they visited. If my son was trying to kill me, I was going to find out why. As I worked, I couldn't stop thinking about the young boy who used to fall asleep in my arms after his mother died, crying for her to come back. The teenager who worked summers in my warehouse, learning the business from the ground up. The young man who'd stood as my best man when I'd briefly remarried in his 20s. The marriage that had ended amicably after 2 years. When had that boy decided his father needed to die? The first report from Samuel arrived 3 days later. I met him at a small diner, 2 towns over, a place where we wouldn't be recognized. He slid a manila folder across the scratched Formica table. "Your son is in serious trouble," he began without preamble. "The marketing firm he claims to own. It filed for bankruptcy 8 months ago. He's been lying to everyone, maintaining appearances while drowning in debt." I opened the folder. Bank statements, court documents, photographs. The evidence was overwhelming. How much does he owe? $2.3 million. Most of it to some very dangerous people. He got in deep with underground gambling operations. Started with sports betting, escalated to high-stakes poker games. The kind where they don't accept bankruptcy as an excuse for non-payment. My coffee grew cold as I studied the papers. Transaction records showed a pattern of desperation. Loans from multiple sources, each used to pay off the previous creditor. A pyramid of debt building toward collapse. "What about Melissa?" Samuel's expression darkened. "She doesn't work for any fashion magazine in Manhattan. She's a part-time retail clerk at Nordstrom. Has been for 6 months. Before that, unemployment. Before that, a string of short-term positions never lasting more than a year. But she told us she was a senior editor. Shows us magazine layouts, talks about photo shoots. All fabricated. She's good at it, I'll give her that. Knows enough buzzwords to sound convincing. But here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out another set of photos. These are from Lawrence Hartley's office building. High-powered attorney specializes in inheritance disputes and competency hearings. The images showed Jake and Melissa entering the building, time-stamped over several dates in the past month. They're planning something bigger than just poisoning you, Samuel continued. My guess, if the quick death didn't work, Plan B involves having you declared incompetent. Get power of attorney, control your assets, then you conveniently pass away from natural causes. Can we prove any of this? Working on it. I've got surveillance on them now. But Bud, there's something else you need to see. He handed me a USB drive. From your home cameras. I pulled this footage yesterday. Back home, I plugged the drive into my computer. The timestamp showed Sunday afternoon while I'd been at my golf club. Jake and Melissa were in my study. The audio was clear. He's taking too long. Jake's voice frustrated and harsh. The creditors called again. They're not going to wait much longer. Patience, Melissa replied. We stick to the plan. The mercury is working just slowly. He's getting more forgetful. Did you see him at dinner last week? He told the same story twice. Because you kept filling his wine glass. That's not the same as actual dementia. It's a start. Dr. Patterson says 3 more months of consistent exposure, and the symptoms will be undeniable. Then, we file for conservatorship. We don't have 3 months. They want their money by Christmas, or what, they'll break your legs, kill you. If you're dead, they definitely don't get paid. If your father dies naturally, and you inherit, everybody wins. The restaurant dose would have sped things up. That was reckless. Thank God he didn't drink it. A heart attack 2 days after closing the biggest deal of his life. People would ask questions. People like who he's 67, overweight, stressed. Natural causes. Except for the son who inherits everything. The son with massive debts. Even small-town cops can connect those dots. I paused the video, my hands shaking. Hearing my son discuss my death like a business transaction cut deeper than any physical wound. But I forced myself to continue. Jake was pacing now. Maybe we should increase the mercury dose. And risk acute poisoning? No. We maintain current levels. Keep inviting him to Sunday dinner. I'll keep cooking his favorite pot roast. He never suspects anything in comfort food. My stomach turned. Sunday dinners. A tradition I'd cherished since Jake moved out. The one constant in our relationship, no matter how busy life became. Now, I understood why he'd been so insistent on maintaining it, why Melissa always volunteered to cook. The video continued. Jake stopped at my bookshelf, running his finger along the spines. Sometimes I wonder what Mom would think. Melissa's laugh was cold. Your sainted mother is dead. Has been for decades. Stop living in the past. She loved him. And where did that get her dead at 42? Your father went on to make millions while she rotted in the ground. Fair? I don't think so. That's not... Mom had cancer. It wasn't his fault. Wasn't it? How much time did he spend building his precious company instead of with her? How many treatments did they skip because he was too busy with work? And now, he gets to enjoy all that success while she's gone. While you struggle. While we live in that pathetic apartment pretending everything's fine. It's justice, Jake. We're just balancing the scales. I stopped the video. I couldn't watch more. Not then. The accusation hit old wounds I thought had healed. Yes, I'd worked hard during Sharon's illness, trying to keep the business afloat while paying for treatments insurance wouldn't cover. Yes, there were nights I'd stayed late at the warehouse, avoiding the sight of her growing thinner, weaker. But I'd loved her. God, how I'd loved her. The camera system alerted me to movement. Jake's car pulling into the driveway. A visit I hadn't expected. I quickly closed the computer, composed myself, and met them at the door. Dad. Jake's smile seemed genuine. Hope you don't mind us dropping by. Melissa brought some of her homemade cookies. I looked at the covered plate in her hands. Chocolate chip, my favorite. How many of these had I eaten over the past months? How much poison disguised as love? Of course not. Come in. I led them to the living room, noting how Jake's eyes swept the space, perhaps checking for changes, signs of deterioration. You look tired, Melissa observed, settling onto the couch. Have you been sleeping well? Well enough. Lot on my mind with the sale finalized. You should take a vacation, Jake suggested. Maybe a cruise somewhere relaxing. Away from my doctors. Away from anyone who might notice symptoms. Away from help if something went wrong. Maybe in the spring. Why wait? You've earned it. In fact, Melissa found some great deals on Caribbean cruises. Senior discounts all inclusive. We could book it for you. That's thoughtful, but I have follow-up meetings with the buyers. Transition planning. Jake's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. For how long? Few months at least. They want me to consult through the integration. Are they paying you extra for that? There it was. Always back to money. It was part of the sale agreement. Melissa stood abruptly. I'll put these cookies in the kitchen. Save them for later. She headed toward the kitchen before I could protest. Jake leaned forward once she left. Dad, I need to ask you something. It's embarrassing, but I'm in some financial trouble. The business hit a rough patch. Nothing major, just cash flow issues. I was wondering if you could help. Just a loan. I'll pay it back once things turn around. I studied my son's face. The slight sheen of sweat. The way his fingers drummed against his knee. Classic tells from when he was young, and lying about homework or curfew violations. How much? 500,000. I know it sounds like a lot, but with the new contracts coming in. What new contracts? He blinked. Did I not mention them? 3 major brands want to hire us for their campaigns. Fortune 500 companies. But I need operating capital to staff up. Which companies? It's confidential. NDAs and all that. But trust me, this is big. Game-changing. Melissa returned, sitting close to Jake, her hand on his knee. A united front. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, Dad. Family helps family, right? That word, family. From the woman discussing my murder like a recipe modification. I'll think about it, I said. Send me a business plan, financial projections, the usual due diligence documents. Jake's face flushed. You want a business plan from your son? From anyone asking for $500,000, yes. I can't believe this. After everything I've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Jake? The question hung between us. His mouth opened and closed, searching for words. Finally, he stood. We should go. Come on, Melissa. She rose gracefully, ever the performer. Don't forget those cookies, Dad. Made them special just for you. After they left, I threw the entire plate in the garbage. Then I called Samuel. We need to accelerate our timeline. Jake just asked for money. He's getting desperate. How much? $500,000. Claimed it was for business expansion. Samuel's pause was telling. Based on what I'm seeing, that might just cover his most urgent debts. Keep him waiting for an answer. Desperate people make mistakes. That night, I went through photo albums I hadn't opened in years. Jake's first birthday, teaching him to ride a bike, his high school graduation where he'd thanked me for being both mother and father. When had that grateful boy become someone capable of patricide? The answer came as I studied a photo from his college years. A trip to Vegas for his 21st birthday. Even then, I could see it in his eyes. The excitement as we passed the casinos. The way he'd begged to try just one hand of poker. I'd laughed, given him $100 to lose, thinking it was harmless fun. What doors had I opened that day? What addiction had I unknowingly fed? But no, I couldn't blame myself for his choices. Millions of people gambled recreationally, without becoming murderers. Whatever darkness lived in Jake, now he'd nurtured it himself. Melissa might have encouraged it, shaped it, but the seed was already there. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Walker. This is Marcus from the restaurant. I heard you were looking for me. We should talk. I met Marcus at a quiet coffee shop downtown the next morning. He was younger than I'd remembered, maybe late 20s, with the kind of alertness that suggested military background. His handshake was firm, his gaze direct. Thank you for reaching out, I began as we settled into a corner booth. Your investigator found me first, he admitted. But I would have contacted you anyway. Been weighing on my conscience. Tell me exactly what you saw. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing me a video. We record everything in the restaurant for liability reasons. Multiple angles. The footage was clear. Jake palming a small vial, the quick pour into my juice, while Melissa created a distraction by dropping her napkin. Professional. Practiced. Have you shown this to anyone else? No, sir. Figured you'd want to handle it privately. Family matters and all. But Mr. Walker, this isn't the first time I've seen something like this. My coffee cup paused halfway to my lips. What do you mean? Used to work security at the Bellagio in Vegas. Saw all kinds of scams. Your son? I recognized him. He was in deep with some bad people. The kind who don't accept payment plans. When was this? About 3 years ago. He got caught counting cards badly. Not illegal, but the house banned him. Problem was, he owed markers to private games. The underground kind. Last I heard, he'd worked out some kind of deal, but those debts don't just disappear. I thanked Marcus, paid him for his information and discretion, then headed to my estate attorney's office. Patricia Coleman had handled my affairs for 15 years. If anyone could help me navigate the legal implications, it would be her. Her secretary showed me in immediately. Patricia stood from behind her mahogany desk, concern evident on her face. Bud, you sounded urgent on the phone. I laid out everything. The poisoning, the surveillance footage, Jake's debts. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in her precise handwriting. When I finished, she removed her glasses, rubbing her temples. This is criminal conspiracy, attempted murder, fraud. We need to involve law enforcement. I will. But first I need to protect my assets. If something happens to me, I can draw up new documents immediately. We'll create a trust with multiple safeguards. Independent trustees. Specific clauses about inheritance in cases of foul play. She paused. Bud, has Jake been asking about your will? Constantly. And apparently he tried to schedule a meeting with you about power of attorney procedures. Her face darkened. He called last week. Wanted to discuss options for aging parents showing signs of dementia. I told him any such discussion would require your presence and consent. He wasn't pleased. There's more. I've been slowly poisoned with mercury for months. My doctor can provide full documentation. Patricia's fingers flew across her keyboard. I'm requesting an emergency appointment with Judge Harrison. We can get a restraining order, freeze any attempts at conservatorship. She looked up. Who else knows about this? My doctor, my investigator, the security guard from the restaurant, and the district attorney will know soon. Monica Sheffield, good. She's thorough. Bud, I need to ask, is there any chance Jake could claim you're paranoid? Any mental health history he could exploit? None. Annual cognitive assessments for the company insurance. All perfect scores. Good. Now let's discuss the nuclear option. We can set a trap. Over the next 2 hours, we crafted a plan. A new will that seemed to give Jake everything, but contained carefully worded provisions. Any beneficiary involved in hastening my death would forfeit all claims. Their portion would go to charity. More importantly, hidden language that would trigger investigations into any suspicious circumstances. It's brilliant, Patricia said, reviewing the final draft. On the surface, it gives him what he wants. Underneath, it's a legal minefield. My next stop was the bank. Thomas Reed, my personal banker for 2 decades, met me in his private office. His usual jovial demeanor shifted when he saw my expression. "Thomas, I need you to alert me to any inquiries about my accounts. Anyone, especially my son." His eyebrows rose. "Jake, is everything all right? Family complications. Has he contacted you recently?" Thomas hesitated, then opened his computer. "He called last week. General questions about account structures, how joint signatures work. I told him I couldn't discuss your finances without written authorization. He mentioned you'd been forgetful lately. Might need help managing things." Another piece of the puzzle. Jake laying groundwork, planting seeds of doubt about my competence. "If he contacts you again, document everything. And Thomas, I'm setting up new accounts, ones he doesn't know about." We spent the afternoon restructuring my finances, moving funds, creating barriers, establishing protocols that would protect my assets, even if I became incapacitated. Every transaction recorded, every decision documented. That evening, Samuel called with shocking news. Melissa Trent isn't her real name. It's Melissa Townsend. And Bud, she's done this before. I sat down heavily. "Explain." 2 cases. Arizona 5 years ago. Elderly widower named Franklin Pierce, worth about $8 million. Started dating his divorced son. 4 months later, Pierce died of apparent heart failure. The son inherited everything. Year after that, the son died in a car accident. Melissa got a substantial insurance payout as his widow. My God. Nevada 3 years ago. Similar pattern. Rich father, struggling son, whirlwind romance. This time the old man survived, but only because a nurse noticed unusual symptoms. Investigation went nowhere. Not enough evidence. But Melissa left town quickly after that. She's a black widow, and Jake is her latest mark. Appears so. But here's the twist. In both cases, she met the sons at casinos. Specifically at high-stakes poker games, where they were deeply in debt. Patterns seem familiar. I thought about Jake's debts, his meeting Melissa in Vegas. She targets vulnerable men with rich fathers. Exactly. Probably has connections with the underground gambling operations. They point her toward desperate marks. She plays the loving girlfriend, encourages the relationship with daddy, then helps arrange daddy's demise. Everyone profits. Except the victims. And eventually the sons. That car accident in Arizona brake lines showed signs of tampering. Never proved, but suspicious. I felt sick. My son wasn't just trying to kill me. He was probably signing his own death warrant. Samuel, we need everything you can find on her. Every detail, every connection. Already on it. My contacts in Vegas are digging into her history there. Should have more by tomorrow. I hung up and walked to my window, looking out at the garden Sharon had designed before she died. She'd made me promise to take care of Jake, to be both parents. Had I failed so completely that he'd fallen into the arms of a serial killer? My phone rang. Jake. Dad, have you thought about the loan? Still considering it. $500,000 is substantial. I know, but I'm desperate. The truth is, I'm in trouble. Gambling debts, bad people. I didn't want to admit it, but if I don't pay soon. A crack in the facade. Truth mixed with lies, the most dangerous kind. How long have you been gambling, Jake? It started small, just fun bets with friends. But it got out of hand. Melissa doesn't even know how bad it is. That was a lie. She knew exactly how bad it was. Had probably encouraged it. If I give you this money, it goes directly to your creditors. I handle the payments. Yes, of course. Whatever you think is best. Come by tomorrow afternoon. Bring a full list of what you owe and to whom. Everything on the table, Jake. No more lies. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love you, Dad. The words stung. How easily they rolled off his tongue even as he plotted my death. After we hung up, I made one more call. Monica Sheffield, the district attorney. We'd known each other for years, ever since I'd supported her first campaign. Monica, I need to see you. Tonight, if possible. It's life or death, literally. An hour later, I sat in her home office, laying out the evidence. She listened like the former prosecutor. She was asking pointed questions, taking detailed notes. "This is enough for attempted murder charges," she said when I finished. "Multiple counts. Conspiracy, fraud. We're talking serious prison time." "I need more than arrests. I need them to reveal everything. The gambling connections, Melissa's past victims, all of it." Monica leaned back thinking. "A sting operation. We could use undercover officers, have them pose as representatives of your Swiss accounts. See if Jake and Melissa take the bait." "Swiss accounts? You don't have any, but they don't know that. Greed makes people stupid. We dangle the possibility of hidden millions, see how far they'll go to access them." It was brilliant. Another trap, another test of their desperation. "When do we start?" "Give me 2 days to set it up. In the meantime, stay vigilant. And Bud, consider staying somewhere else. If they're escalating." "I'm not leaving my home, but I've hired additional security. Discreet, but effective." As I drove home, I thought about the web we were weaving. Each strand designed to catch the predators who thought me weak. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built my company on logistics, on seeing connections others missed, on strategic planning. Now, those same skills would save my life and expose my son's betrayal. At home, I found a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside, a burner phone and a note. "Mr. Walker, we represent certain interests in Las Vegas. Your son owes substantial sums. We prefer to handle these matters quietly, but our patience has limits. Perhaps we should talk. Call this number at midnight if interested in resolution." The gambling syndicate. Making contact directly. Another piece to play on this increasingly complex board. I pocketed the phone. At midnight, I would make that call. Not to pay Jake's debts, but to gather more evidence. To understand the full scope of what my son had become entangled in. In my study, I updated my journal, documenting everything. If something happened to me before the trap was complete, the evidence would survive. Justice would prevail. As I wrote, I remembered teaching Jake to play chess when he was 8. How to think ahead, anticipate moves, set traps for the opponent. The student had become the enemy, but the teacher still had moves to play. Tomorrow, Jake would come for his money. He'd find a father willing to help, papers to sign, hope for salvation. He wouldn't realize every document was another bar in the cage I was building around him and his Black Widow bride. The hunter thought himself clever, stalking what he believed was weak prey. He was about to learn that some old wolves still have teeth. The war room, as I'd come to think of it, was set up in my home's finished basement. Patricia Samuel, Dr. Harrison, and Monica Sheffield sat around the table I'd once used for poker games with friends. How fitting that we now planned a different kind of high-stakes game. Monica spread out the files her team had compiled. Melissa Townsend has quite a history. 7 aliases across 5 states. Always the same pattern. Find vulnerable men with wealthy fathers, orchestrate the father's death, inherit, then eliminate the son. "How many victims?" Patricia asked. "Confirmed 2 elderly men dead, 2 sons dead. Suspected at least 3 more cases that match the pattern, but lack evidence." Dr. Harrison added his medical reports to the pile. Bud's mercury levels tell a precise story. Slow, steady poisoning over 6 months. Whoever did this has medical knowledge or excellent guidance. Samuel pulled up photos on his laptop. Melissa took online courses, pharmacology, basic chemistry, even a semester of pre-med before dropping out. Enough to be dangerous. "What about the gambling connection?" I asked. Monica smiled grimly. "That's where it gets interesting. The Vegas syndicate Jake owes money to. They've been under federal investigation for 2 years. Money laundering, racketeering, suspected murder. Your son stumbled into the worst possible crowd. Can we use that? Already in motion. FBI wants to flip someone inside. Jake could be their ticket if he cooperates." Patricia cleared her throat. "Let's discuss the legal trap. I've prepared documents that appear to give Jake immediate access to Bud's fortune, upon signature. But buried in subsection 12, paragraph 43, is language that triggers automatic investigation of any suspicious circumstances surrounding Bud's death or incapacitation. They'll have lawyers review it, Samuel pointed out. Of course. But lawyers in a hurry, looking at a document that seems to give their client everything, they'll miss it. I've seen it happen with far simpler contracts. Monica's phone buzzed. She answered, listened, then smiled. Perfect timing. My undercover team is ready. 2 officers who specialize in financial fraud. They'll approach Jake as representatives of a Swiss bank, where Bud supposedly has hidden accounts. I don't have Swiss accounts, I reminded them. They don't know that. We've created a paper trail. Fake statements showing 50 million in numbered accounts. Old family money hidden from the IRS. Irresistible bait for someone desperate. The plan was elegant in its complexity. Multiple approaches, each designed to reveal more of Jake and Melissa's intentions while building an airtight legal case. There's one more element, Samuel said, producing a small device. Audio recorder. Looks like a pen. Bud, you'll wear this whenever you meet with them. Dr. Harrison raised a concern. What about Bud's safety during all this, if they realize what's happening? I've hired personal security, I assured them. Former Secret Service. They'll be invisible, but always close. Good, Monica said. Because there's something else. That burner phone you received. We traced the number. It connects to Anthony Torino. Real piece of work. Suspected in at least 5 murders, though nothing's been proven. The room fell silent. My son owed money to a killer. Did you make the midnight call? Samuel asked. I did. Torino himself answered. Very polite, very clear. Jake has until New Year's to pay in full. After that, they'll collect however necessary. What did you tell him? That I was interested in resolving the situation. He suggested a meeting. This Friday. Monica shook her head. Too dangerous. I agree, Patricia said. Let the FBI handle that angle. No. My voice was firm. If I don't show, they might accelerate their timeline with Jake. Force him to do something even more desperate. I'll meet Torino, but on my terms. Public place, security nearby. They argued, but I held firm. This was my son, my situation to resolve. Eventually, we agreed on protocols to keep me safe during the meeting. Patricia shifted topics. We need to discuss the pregnancy. I looked up sharply. What pregnancy? Samuel grimaced. Forgot to mention. Melissa's been taking fertility drugs. Aggressively trying to conceive. My guess, another leverage point. Hard to deny money to your grandchild. The manipulations never ended. Layer upon layer of deception, each more cruel than the last. If she's pregnant. She's not, yet. But pharmacy records show she's serious about changing that. Multiple fertility specialists, hormone treatments. She wants Jake's baby. Or, more accurately, she wants your grandchild. Dr. Harrison spoke quietly. There's a medical precedent to consider. If she does conceive, claims could be made about the child's inheritance rights. Even if Jake is convicted. We'll cross that bridge if we come to it, Patricia said. For now, we focus on stopping them before any pregnancy occurs. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Every angle examined, every contingency planned. By the end, we had a comprehensive strategy that would unfold over the coming weeks. As everyone prepared to leave, Monica pulled me aside. Bud, I need you to understand something. Once this goes fully operational, there's no stopping it. Jake will likely spend decades in prison. Are you prepared for that? I thought of the boy who'd cried in my arms after his mother died. The young man who'd stood proudly at his college graduation. The son who now plotted my murder for money. He stopped being my son the moment he poisoned me. Whatever happens now, he chose. She nodded. The undercovers will make contact tomorrow. Be ready for Jake to get more desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. After everyone left, I sat alone in my study, the weight of what we'd set in motion settling on my shoulders. On my desk, sat a photo from Jake's 10th birthday. He'd wanted a superhero party. I'd dressed as Batman to his Robin, and we'd fought imaginary villains all afternoon. Now the villains were real, and one of them wore my son's face. The next morning brought Jake's visit. He arrived precisely at 2, dressed in his best suit, carrying a folder of what I assumed were his debts. Melissa waited in the car, visible through the window. Watching. Always watching. "Dad, thank you for this," Jake began, as we settled in the living room. "I know I've disappointed you." "Show me the numbers." He handed over the folder. I made a show of reviewing each page, though Samuel had already provided me with the real figures. Jake's list was surprisingly accurate. 2.3 million in total, broken down by creditor. The largest sum, 800,000 to A. Torino Enterprises. This Torino, he's the most pressing. Jake's face paled slightly. Yes, he's inflexible about payment schedules. I'll need to meet him. Understand who I'm paying. No. The response was too quick, too panicked. I mean, that's not necessary. I can handle the arrangements. The hell you can. You handled yourself into this mess. If I'm cleaning it up, I do it properly. I set down the folder. I've already made contact. We meet Friday. Jake's hands trembled. You called Torino, Dad. These aren't people you negotiate with. I've negotiated with union bosses, government officials, and corporate raiders. I think I can handle a Vegas thug. He's more than that. He's connected, powerful, dangerous. So am I, son. You seem to have forgotten that. A moment of silence. Then Jake leaned forward, desperation clear in his eyes. Will you help me or not? I'll consider it. But first, we need to discuss your future. This gambling ends now. You'll enter treatment, submit to monitoring. And Melissa. What about her? She's involved in this somehow. Don't deny it. I see how she pushes you, manipulates you. Jake's jaw tightened. You don't know her. She saved me. When everyone else gave up, she stayed. Because she saw opportunity. A desperate man with a rich father. Tell me, Jake, whose idea was it to poison me? The words hung between us like a blade. Jake's face cycled through emotions. Shock, fear, calculation, finally settling on manufactured outrage. Poison. What are you talking about? The mercury in my system. The rohypnol at the restaurant. Did you think I wouldn't find out? I don't. Dad, you're paranoid. Maybe the stress of the sale. I pulled out the medical reports, tossing them on the coffee table. Documented. Verified by 3 independent labs. Someone's been poisoning me for 6 months. Strange how it coincides with your Sunday dinner tradition. Jake stared at the papers without touching them. I could see his mind racing, calculating odds, planning lies. If someone's poisoning you, it isn't me. I love you, Dad. You love my money. That's not fair. Fair. Let's discuss fair. Your mother died when you were 12. I raised you alone, built a company to secure your future, paid for your education, supported your dreams. And this is my reward. Attempted murder. I would never. Stop lying. I slammed my hand on the table. I have video, audio, evidence of everything. You and Melissa discussing my death like a business plan. Planning to have me declared incompetent. Disappointed I'm taking too long to die. The color drained from Jake's face. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. From my own son. I stood, towering over him. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. Think very carefully about your next moves. Because I promise you, Jake, if you continue down this path, you'll lose more than money. You'll lose everything. Jake stood slowly, his mask finally slipping. The loving son facade cracked, revealing something cold underneath. You always were too smart for your own good. Just like Mom used to say. Your mother never said that. No. Maybe you didn't know her as well as you thought. Maybe there's a lot you don't know. He left, without another word. Through the window, I watched him get into the car where Melissa waited, They sat talking for several minutes, her gestures animated, probably demanding details. Finally, they drove away. My security chief, Marcus Thompson, no relation to the restaurant. Marcus emerged from the next room where he'd been monitoring. That went about as expected. He'll panic now. Good. Panicked people make mistakes. I turned from the window. Double the security on the house. And Marcus. If they come back, I want to know the moment they cross the property line. That evening, the undercover officers made their move. I watched via secure video link from Monica's office as they approached Jake at an upscale bar. The audio was crystal clear. Mr. Walker. Jake Walker. The first officer, playing a Swiss banker, extended his hand. Hans Gruber, Zurich Consolidated Bank. Might we have a word? Jake glanced around nervously. I don't know any Swiss banks. Of course not. That's rather the point of Swiss banking. Your father maintains several accounts with us. Given recent developments, we wanted to discuss succession planning. The hook was set. Jake's greed overcame caution. Developments. Your father is updating his will. Yes, in such cases, we like to ensure smooth transition of international assets. Death taxes can be so burdensome. With proper planning. How much are we talking about? I'm not at liberty to discuss exact figures without proper authorization. But let's say your father has been quite prudent about diversifying his holdings internationally. Jake bought it completely. Within minutes, he was pumping them for information, trying to learn about accounts I'd never opened, money that didn't exist. The officers played him perfectly, revealing just enough to keep him hooked while gathering evidence of his intentions. If something were to happen to my father, Jake said carefully, how quickly could funds be accessed? That depends entirely on documentation. Death certificates will execution proper signatures. Though I must say, in cases of unnatural circumstances, investigations can delay transfers significantly. Unnatural. Suspicious deaths, murders, such ugliness. The Swiss government cooperates fully with international investigations in such cases. Accounts can be frozen for years. Jake's face showed his frustration. Even the imaginary money would be out of reach if he killed me. But if it were natural causes, heart attack, stroke, much simpler. Though even then, proper documentation is essential. And of course, the will must be properly executed. Any challenges to mental competency or undue influence? The conversation continued, Jake revealing more of his desperation with every question. The officers recorded everything, building the case one damning statement at a time. Back in Monica's office, she smiled. He's practically confessing to conspiracy. This is gold. It's just the beginning, I replied. Tomorrow, Melissa gets her turn. The trap was closing, each element falling perfectly into place. My son and his Black Widow bride thought they were master manipulators. They were about to learn what real strategic planning looked like. Friday arrived with unseasonable warmth for December in Connecticut. The kind of false spring that makes you forget winter's teeth still wait to bite. Fitting weather for a day of deceptions. I dressed carefully for dinner with Jake and Melissa. Dark suit, my father's gold watch, the appearance of prosperity without ostentation. Every detail mattered now. In my jacket pocket, the pen recorder Samuel had given me. In my study, safe, a will that would either save my legacy or destroy my son. They arrived at 6:30, Jake, carrying a bottle of wine, Melissa, holding a casserole dish. Playing the perfect family, even as they plotted murder. Dad, you look well, Jake said, embracing me. I wondered if he could feel the wire I wore. Amazing what proper rest can do, I replied, and cutting out certain foods that weren't agreeing with me. Melissa's smile flickered almost imperceptibly. I brought your favorite, beef stroganoff. Made it just the way you like. How thoughtful. Maria already prepared dinner, but we'll save it for tomorrow. Another micro-expression of frustration. Their weapon neutralized. We settled in the dining room, Maria serving the meal she'd prepared under my watchful eye. Roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. Simple, safe food. I watched Jake and Melissa exchange glances as I ate heartily, showing none of the fatigue and confusion they'd cultivated so carefully. "I've been thinking about your situation, Jake." I began as Maria cleared the appetizer plates. "The debts, the poor decisions, the lies." Jake's fork paused midway to his mouth. "Dad!" "No, let me finish. You're my son, my only child. Despite everything, that means something." I reached into my jacket, producing a folded document. "I've had Patricia draw up new papers." Melissa leaned forward, poorly concealed eagerness in her eyes. "Papers? A codicil to my will. Given Jake's financial troubles, it seems prudent to ensure a smooth transition of assets. This document guarantees immediate access to the estate upon my death, bypassing normal probate procedures." I slid the papers across the table. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he picked them up. I watched him read, knowing he'd see exactly what we wanted him to see. Immediate inheritance. No waiting. No complications. Everything he'd been poisoning me to obtain. "Dad, this is generous." "It's practical. At my age, with my health concerns, it's important to have affairs in order." I coughed slightly, a calculated gesture. "The stress of the sale, the symptoms I've been experiencing. Better to be prepared." Melissa had moved to read over Jake's shoulder. I saw her eyes scanning, searching for tricks. She'd find none. Patricia had crafted a masterpiece of legal deception. Everything they wanted on the surface, damnation in the depths. "When would this take effect?" Melissa asked. "Upon signing and notarization. Patricia can handle it Monday morning." "Why wait?" Jake's eagerness broke through. "I mean, if it's important to have things settled." "You're right." I pulled out my phone. "Let me call Patricia. She mentioned she could come by this evening if needed." The trap was baited. Now to spring it. As I made the call, I watched them whisper urgently. Jake seemed nervous, Melissa insistent. She gestured at the papers at me, her meaning clear. This was the opportunity they'd been waiting for. Patricia arrived within the hour, playing her role perfectly. Professional, efficient, slightly bored by what seemed routine estate planning. She brought her notary seal and an assistant to witness. "Shall we use your study, bud?" she asked. We processed in like a funeral party. Jake and Melissa could barely contain their anticipation. They thought they were moments away from millions. Instead, they walked toward their own destruction. I signed first, my signature bold and clear. Then, Jake, his hands steady now with greed's courage. Melissa signed as witness, cementing her involvement. "There's one more thing," I said as Patricia notarized the documents. "I've been experiencing some health issues. Memory lapses, confusion. I think it might be wise to grant Jake medical power of attorney, just in case." The surprise on their faces was genuine. They hadn't expected this gift. Patricia produced another set of papers. "I anticipated this might come up. Standard medical directives. It grants Jake authority over medical decisions should you become incapacitated. More signatures. More notarization. With each stroke of the pen, they bound themselves tighter to their crimes." "This is all quite sudden," Patricia said, maintaining her facade. "Are you sure about this, bud, once signed?" "I trust my son," I said, looking directly at Jake. "Family takes care of family." Jake had the grace to look uncomfortable. Melissa squeezed his hand, a gesture of support or control. After Patricia left with the executed documents, we returned to dinner. The atmosphere had shifted. Jake and Melissa were relaxed now, believing victory was theirs. I played the part of the aging father, coughing occasionally, forgetting small details, showing the symptoms they'd worked so hard to create. "I think I'll have some wine after all," I said, reaching for the bottle Jake had brought. "Are you sure that's wise?" Jake asked. "With your medications." "What medications? I'm not taking any medications." "But last week you said—" "Did I? I don't remember." I poured a generous glass, noting how they watched every sip. "This is good. What is it?" "Chateau Margaux, 2015. Expensive. Probably purchased with money he didn't have, anticipating celebration." I took another sip, then set the glass down carefully. I feel strange, I said, touching my chest. Tight. Jake and Melissa exchanged quick glances. Hope, anticipation. Should we call someone? Jake asked, his tone carefully concerned. No, probably just indigestion, though. I gasped slightly, clutching the table edge. My chest, the pressure. I stood abruptly, knocking over the wine glass. The red liquid spread across my mother's white tablecloth like blood. Staggering slightly, I gripped Jake's shoulder. Can't breathe properly. Help me to the couch. They supported me to the living room, their faces mixing genuine alarm with something darker. Opportunity. We should call 911, Melissa said, but her hand didn't move toward her phone. Wait, Jake said quickly. Let's see if it passes. Dad, try to relax. Deep breaths. I lay on the couch, eyes half closed, watching them through my lashes. They stood over me like vultures waiting. The papers, I whispered. Thank God we signed them tonight. Don't talk like that, Jake said unconvincingly. You're going to be fine. My pills in the study, top drawer. Jake hesitated. What pills? Heart medication. Dr. Harrison prescribed them last week. Please, Jake. He left reluctantly. I heard him searching the study, finding nothing because no pills existed. Melissa knelt beside me, checking my pulse with surprising competence. His heart rate is elevated but steady, she told Jake when he returned empty-handed. No pills, though. I must have misplaced them, I mumbled. So tired. Maybe I should rest. Yes, rest, Melissa agreed quickly. We'll stay with you. They sat watching me for nearly an hour as I pretended to drift in and out of consciousness. I heard them whispering, debating whether to call for help. Each time one suggested it, the other found reasons to wait. They were willing to let me die on that couch, rather than risk medical intervention that might save me. Finally, I recovered enough to sit up. Feeling better. False alarm, I guess. The disappointment on their faces was palpable. Another opportunity lost. You should see Dr. Harrison tomorrow, Jake suggested. These episodes are concerning. You're right. I'll call first thing. I stood carefully. I think I'll go to bed. It's been an eventful evening. They gathered their things reluctantly. At the door, Melissa turned back. The papers we signed. They're secure, right? I mean, if something were to happen. Patricia will file them Monday. Why worried about something? Of course not. Just wondering about the process. After they left, I called Monica. Did you get all that? Every word. Their failure to call 911 while believing you were having a heart attack is damning, combined with everything else. Is it enough? More than enough. But let's see what tomorrow brings. Your meeting with Torino might provide the final pieces. I hung up and walked to my study, retrieving the real bottle of heart medication Dr. Harrison had prescribed years ago for mild hypertension. Such a simple prop, but it had revealed so much. My son and his wife had sat watching what they believed was my death, debating whether to allow it. Whatever love I'd still harbored for Jake died in those moments. He was no longer my son. He was just another criminal who needed to face justice. The game was nearly over. Tomorrow would bring the end game. But tonight, I sat in my study looking at old photos, mourning the boy Jake had been before greed, and a black widow's influence had poisoned his soul. Outside December, wind rattled the windows, winter reasserting itself after the false warmth. By Monday, the trap would close completely. My son would learn that some prey have teeth, and some old men are far more dangerous than they appear. The papers they'd signed so eagerly, Patricia had explained the hidden clauses after they left. Any beneficiary involved in a crime against me would forfeit all claims. Attempting to hasten my death triggered automatic investigation. Using medical power of attorney for anything but my benefit constituted fraud. They'd signed their own confession, sealed their own fate. All that remained was the final act. I poured myself a real glass of wine, toasting the empty room. To justice, I said aloud, and to the bitter education of ungrateful sons. Monday couldn't come soon enough. Monday morning arrived wrapped in gray clouds that promised snow. I stood at my bedroom window, watching the first flakes fall, and prepared for what would likely be the worst day of my life. The day I would publicly destroy my own son. Patricia had called earlier. Everything was arranged. The conference room would be full of witnesses to Jake and Melissa's final humiliation. But first, I had one last card to play. At 10 o'clock, my doorbell rang. Anthony Torino stood on my porch, an incongruous figure in his $1,000 suit, against the Connecticut snow. Two men flanked him, their presence more suggestion than threat. "Mr. Walker, good of you to see me." I led them to my study, noting how Torino's eyes cataloged everything. The art, the books, the visible signs of wealth. Maria served coffee with steady hands, though I'd told her who these men were. "Your son owes me considerable money." Torino began without preamble. 800,000 according to his records. 800,000 in principal. With interest and penalties, it's now over $1 million. Your son has expensive habits and poor judgment. A dangerous combination. Torino smiled thinly. "Indeed. I understand you're considering helping him." "I'm considering many things. Tell me, Mr. Torino, how did Jake accumulate such a debt?" "The usual way. Confidence exceeding ability. He thought he could count cards. Thought he was smarter than everyone else. The house always wins, Mr. Walker." "And if he can't pay—" "I'm a businessman. Dead men can't pay debts. But examples must be made. Bones break. Businesses burn. Reputations die. Your son would survive, but he'd wish he hadn't." I nodded slowly. "What if I told you Jake has been trying to kill me for my inheritance?" Torino's expression didn't change. "I'd say that shows poor planning. You're worth more alive than dead. A man with your resources could arrange reasonable payment terms. And if I were to provide evidence of Jake's crimes to law enforcement, if he went to prison, then his debt would pass to his wife. Pretty thing. Many ways for a woman like that to earn money in Vegas." The threat was subtle, but clear. I pulled out a bank draft. 1.2 million. Full payment of Jake's debt plus interest. But there are conditions. Torino leaned forward slightly. "I'm listening." "Jake and Melissa are about to be arrested. They'll likely serve significant prison time. This payment clears the debt entirely. No retribution, no contact with them, or any family members. The matter ends today." "You're protecting a son who tried to kill you." "I'm protecting myself from future complications. Do we have an agreement?" Torino studied the draft, then nodded. "We have an agreement. Your son's debt is cleared. He'll never hear from us again." He stood pocketing the draft. "You're an unusual man, Mr. Walker. Most fathers would let their murderous children face consequences. I am letting him face consequences, just not yours." After they left, I prepared for the real confrontation. At 2 o'clock, I would meet Jake and Melissa at Patricia's office. They thought they were finalizing their inheritance. Instead, they'd find justice waiting. Marcus Thompson drove me his team following in a separate car. "You sure about this, sir? We could handle the arrests privately." "No. They tried to kill me publicly, gradually making me think I was losing my mind. Their humiliation should be equally complete." Patricia's office building stood like a monument to law and order in downtown Hartford. We took the elevator to the top floor, where her conference room waited. I entered first, surveying the assembled players. Monica Sheffield sat at the far end of the table, 2 FBI agents beside her. Patricia was there with her assistant. Dr. Harrison had come to provide medical testimony. Samuel Wright stood by the window, recording equipment ready. 4 uniformed police officers waited in the adjacent room, invisible but ready. "They're 5 minutes out," Samuel reported, checking his phone. I took my seat at the head of the table. The chair felt like a throne of judgment. In a way it was. Jake and Melissa entered precisely at 2, dressed impeccably. Melissa wore pearls I'd given her last Christmas. Jake had on the watch I'd bought for his college graduation. Props in their performance of the loving family. "Dad, Jake said warmly, then paused, noticing the crowd. What's all this? Witnesses, I replied. For what's about to happen. Please sit. They sat uncertainly, glancing between the stern faces around the table. Before we proceed with the estate documents, I said, there are some matters to address. Patricia activated the large screen on the wall. Mr. Walker asked me to prepare a presentation. Evidence of certain activities that affect today's proceedings. The first image appeared. Jake at the restaurant pouring Rohypnol into my orange juice. The security footage was crystal clear. Jake shot to his feet. That's not... You can't prove. Sit down, Monica Sheffield commanded. You'll have your chance to speak later, at your arraignment. The presentation continued. Audio from my home cameras played Jake and Melissa discussing my murder. Dr. Harrison's medical reports showed the systematic mercury poisoning. Bank records revealed Jake's massive debts and fraudulent business claims. With each revelation, Jake and Melissa shrank smaller in their chairs. The weight of evidence was crushing, undeniable. The Swiss bankers, Jake said suddenly. They approached me. Entrapment. Monica smiled coldly. Those were federal agents. And you approached them quite eagerly, with questions about accessing non-existent accounts after your father's death. The coup de grace came when Samuel presented Melissa's history. Her previous victims, the pattern of elderly deaths, the mysterious demise of previous husbands. You're Diane Morrison. Monica addressed Melissa directly. Wanted in Arizona for questioning in 2 deaths. Also known as Sarah Pemberton, wanted in Nevada. Also known as... Those weren't me. Melissa's mask finally cracked completely. You can't prove anything. Actually, we can, Samuel interjected. DNA from the Arizona crime scene. We got a warrant for comparison samples. Perfect match. The room erupted. Melissa turned on Jake, screaming that it was all his idea, that she never wanted to hurt anyone. Jake shouted back that she was the poison expert, the one who planned everything. Their mutual accusations filled the air as the hidden officers emerged. Jake Walker, Melissa Townsend, also known as Diane Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder fraud. The list of charges went on. I watched my son being handcuffed, waiting to feel something. Sadness, perhaps. Relief. Instead, I felt only emptiness. Dad, Jake called out as they led him away. Dad, please. It was her idea, she made me. I'm your son. I stood slowly, meeting his desperate eyes. My son died the day he put poison in my food. You're just a stranger who shares his face. Melissa said nothing as they dragged her out. Her cold eyes promised revenge, but it was an empty threat. She'd spend the rest of her life in prison. Her Black Widow days ended. The conference room emptied until only Patricia and I remained. She handed me a folder. The real will. The one they signed was theatrical. This one ensures your legacy goes where you actually want it. I'd already decided. Charities, scholarships. Jake's childhood friends, who'd remained good people. Nothing for the stranger wearing my son's face. There's one more thing, Patricia said gently. Jake mentioned something during booking. About your wife. He claims to have letters suggesting... Whatever poison he wants to spread about Sharon, I don't want to hear it. She was a good woman who died too young. That's all that matters. Patricia nodded. I'll make sure his lawyer understands that avenue is closed. I left the building feeling oddly light. Snow was falling heavily now, blanketing the city in white. Marcus waited by the car. Where to, sir? The cemetery. I want to visit my wife. We drove in silence to where Sharon lay buried. I stood at her grave, snow accumulating on my shoulders, and spoke to her for the first time in years. I'm sorry, Sharon. I failed with Jake. Failed to see what he was becoming. Failed to stop it. The wind whispered through the bare trees. But I kept my promise. I protected him from the worst consequences. Torino won't touch him. He'll go to prison, but he'll survive. Maybe find redemption. That's more than he deserves, but it's what you would have wanted. I placed flowers on her grave, red roses against the white snow. I'll use the money better now. Help people. Honor your memory properly. And I'll try to remember Jake, as he was not what he became. The ride home was quiet. In my study, I found the photo albums I'd been avoiding and began a different kind of sorting. Pictures of Jake after age 21 went into a box for storage. The earlier ones, the innocent years I kept. That was the son I'd mourn. The childhood existed before Vegas, before gambling, before a black widow named Melissa poisoned more than just my food. My phone rang. Monica Sheffield. Thought you should know. Melissa broke completely. Full confession. She's implicated 3 other women in similar schemes. We're looking at a nationwide ring targeting wealthy elderly men through their children. You've helped us crack something huge. Glad some good came from this. Jake's asking to see you. No. He says he has information about your wife. Monica, my wife died of cancer 30 years ago. Whatever lies Jake wants to spin, I'm not interested. He's where he belongs. Let's leave it at that. I hung up and poured myself a drink. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the world in forgiving white. By morning, the landscape would be transformed, made clean and new. I thought about transformation. About Jake transformed from loving son to would-be killer. About myself transformed from father to victim to instrument of justice. About Melissa revealed as a serial predator, finally caged. Change came whether we wanted it or not. The trick was choosing which transformations to embrace and which to reject. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus at the restaurant. Saw the news. Thank God I spoke up. Your tab is permanently comped. Stay safe, Mr. Walker. A small kindness from a stranger who'd saved my life. Perhaps that was the lesson. That amid all the betrayal and greed, simple human decency still existed. One security guard doing his job had unraveled a murder plot and exposed a nationwide crime ring. I raised my glass in a silent toast to Marcus, to Sharon's memory, to the son Jake had once been. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and trials and public scrutiny. But tonight, in my study surrounded by memories of better times, I could mourn what was lost and plan for what might yet be built from the ruins. The snow fell and the world transformed, and somewhere in a federal holding cell, my son began his own transformation. Whether toward redemption or deeper darkness, only time would tell. 3 months later, I sat in a packed courtroom as the judge read the verdict. Jake stood rigid in his orange jumpsuit thinner, now his gambling swagger replaced by something hollow. Beside him, Melissa maintained her ice queen composure, even as her world crumbled. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant, Jake Walker, guilty. Each verdict fell like a hammer blow. Conspiracy, fraud, attempted poisoning, 25 years to life. I'd testified for the prosecution, laying out every detail of the betrayal. Now, I watched my only child receive what amounted to a life sentence. Melissa received 40 years with no possibility of parole. Her previous crimes in Arizona and Nevada would be prosecuted separately. She'd die in prison, her black widow web finally cut. As they led Jake away, he looked back once. Our eyes met across the courtroom. For a moment, I saw the boy who'd cried for his mother, who'd built model airplanes with patient hands, who'd stood proud at his college graduation. Then, the moment passed, and I saw only the stranger he'd become. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Monica Sheffield gave a brief statement about justice served and the nationwide investigation spawned by our case. 14 elderly men saved from similar plots. A criminal network dismantled. My private tragedy had become public good. I slipped away through a side entrance, Marcus Thompson guiding me to the waiting car. We drove in silence to Sharon's grave, where I laid fresh flowers and sat on the cold bench nearby. It's done, I told her headstone. Jake will spend most of his life in prison. I know you'd forgive him, Sharon. You always saw the best in people. But I can't. Not yet. Maybe someday. 6 months passed. The media attention faded. Life found new rhythms. I threw myself into charity work establishing the Second Chances Foundation for gambling addiction treatment. If I couldn't save Jake, perhaps I could save others from his path. Then the letter arrived. Jake's handwriting, once confident, now showed tremors. Prison had aged him rapidly. Dad, I know I have no right to write, no right to ask for your attention, but I need you to know some things before it's too late. The gambling started in college. You remember that Vegas trip for my 21st birthday? That $100 you gave me to lose, I turned it into 1,000. Felt like God. Felt like I'd found my calling. Every win after that just fed the monster. When I met Melissa, I was already drowning. She seemed like salvation. Beautiful, understanding, with connections that could help me manage the debts. I didn't know what she was. Or maybe I did and didn't care. Desperate men make desperate choices. She never forced me to poison you. That's a lie, I told myself. She suggested it, yes, showed me how. But I mixed the mercury into your food. I poured the rohypnol. My hands. My choice. My damnation. I'm in therapy here. Real therapy, not the con job Melissa was running on me. Learning to face what I became. What I did to you. What I destroyed for money that would have been mine anyway, if I'd just waited, just been a son, instead of a monster. I don't ask for forgiveness. Some sins are too great. But I wanted you to know that I remember the man you tried to teach me to be. I failed him. Failed you. Failed Mom's memory. But I remember. There's a program here where inmates teach literacy to other prisoners. I volunteer. Try to give something back instead of just taking. It's small, pathetic compared to what I stole from you. But it's what I can do. Don't visit. Don't write back. Let me be dead to you. It's what I deserve. I just needed you to know that somewhere in this cell, your son is finally learning to be the man you tried to raise. Too late, but learning. I love you, Dad. The real kind. The kind that doesn't want anything back. Jake. I read the letter 3 times, then set it aside. My hands shook as I poured coffee, processing words I'd never expected to see. Accountability. Remorse. The beginning of redemption. That evening, I called Patricia. I want to set up an education fund for Jake. Nothing he can access, but enough to pay for correspondence courses. Maybe a degree if he pursues it. Are you sure? No. But Sharon would want me to leave the door cracked for redemption. Not open, not forgiven, but not completely closed either. A year passed. The foundation grew. We'd helped over 100 families affected by gambling addiction. Some wrote letters of gratitude. Others sent photos of rebuilding lives. Each success felt like a small balance against Jake's failure. Marcus from the restaurant became a regular lunch companion. His simple act of courage had saved my life, and we'd developed an unlikely friendship. He'd left restaurant security to work for the foundation, heading our intervention team. You ever regret speaking up? I asked one afternoon. Never. Though I wonder sometimes what would have happened if I hadn't. I'd be dead. Jake would have the money. Melissa would have killed him within a year. More elderly men would die. Your courage stopped all that. Just did my job. No, you did the right thing. There's a difference. 2 years after the trial, another letter arrived. Not from Jake, but from a woman named Patricia Summers. Mr. Walker. You don't know me, but your foundation saved my father's life. He'd gambled away everything. Our house, his retirement, my college fund. He was so desperate he'd started talking about life insurance, about how we'd be better off without him. Then he found your program. Free treatment. Real help. No judgment. He's been clean for 6 months now. Still attending meetings. Still fighting. But winning. I researched you. Found out about your son. I can't imagine that pain. But I wanted you to know that from your tragedy came the miracle that saved my family. My father will walk me down the aisle next month because of you. Thank you for turning your pain into purpose. I kept that letter in my desk drawer, reading it on dark days, when the weight of Jake's betrayal felt heaviest. Purpose from pain. Sharon would have liked that. 3 years after the trial, Dr. Harrison called with test results from my annual physical. Mercury levels are undetectable. No lasting organ damage. You're healthier now than you were 5 years ago. It's like the poisoning never happened. Physically, perhaps, but some poisons left marks that blood tests couldn't measure. I'd started visiting schools, talking about elder abuse, financial exploitation, the warning signs families should watch for. The talks were painful, but necessary. If one grandparent was saved, because their family recognized the danger signs, Jake's story served purpose. One evening, while reviewing foundation reports, my phone rang. The caller ID showed the federal prison where Jake was held. I almost didn't answer. Then, surprising myself, I did. "This is a prepaid call from inmate Jake Walker. To accept, press 1. To decline." I pressed 1. "Dad." Jake's voice was different. Older. Calmer. "I'm sorry. I know I promised not to call. But I wanted you to hear from me. I testified today. Against Melissa's network. Gave them everything about how she operated, how she found marks, how the system worked. 14 more arrests coming. Maybe it helps balance the scales a little." "Why tell me?" "Because I wanted to do one thing right. One thing that would make you not proud. I'll never earn that. But less ashamed, maybe. I have to go. Thank you for taking the call." The line went dead. I sat holding the phone, processing emotions I couldn't name. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe never. But something had shifted, some frozen part, beginning to thaw. 5 years after that terrible night at the restaurant, I stood before a gathering at the Foundation's new building. Hundreds of people affected by gambling addiction and elder abuse had come to celebrate our expansion. Marcus stood at my side now, the Foundation's director of operations. His vigilance had started all this. In my speech, I talked about transformation, how poison could become medicine, how betrayal could become purpose, how the worst moments of our lives could become the foundation for serving others. I didn't mention Jake by name. His story was public record, but tonight wasn't about him. It was about the hundreds of families we'd helped, the elderly, protected, the addictions overcome. But I thought about him, the son I'd lost, and the stranger he'd become. The letters that arrived sporadically, showing genuine growth and change. The education fund reports, showing steady progress toward a degree in addiction counseling. The man my boy was becoming, in a cage of his own making. After the ceremony, Monica Sheffield approached. Now the state's attorney general, she'd remained a friend through everything. "I have news. Jake's parole hearing is scheduled for next year. With his cooperation in the network cases and his spotless prison record, he might actually have a chance. 25 to life. He's only served 6 years. 6 years of genuine rehabilitation. His testimony has led to dozens of convictions. He's saved lives, Bud. The parole board will consider that." That night, I sat in my study with Sharon's photo, wrestling with possibilities I'd never imagined. Jake free, while still young enough to build a life. The son who'd tried to kill me walking the streets again. "What would you do, Sharon?" I asked her image. "How do you forgive the unforgivable?" No answer came, but I knew what she'd say. That forgiveness wasn't about deserving. It was about releasing poison from your own soul. That redemption was always possible for those who truly sought it. I wasn't there yet. Maybe I'd never be. But for the first time since that night at the restaurant, I could imagine a future where Jake and I might sit in the same room without hatred between us. Not as father and son. That relationship had died with the first dose of mercury, but perhaps as two men who'd survived their worst selves and found purpose in the ruins. The Foundation's work continued. Lives were saved, families preserved, and somewhere in a federal prison, a man who used to be my son counseled other addicts, taught literacy to inmates, and slowly became someone worth knowing. Time would tell if redemption was real or just another con. But for the first time in 6 years, I had something I'd thought lost forever. Hope. What do you think? I asked the empty room. Do you believe people can truly change after committing such terrible acts? Have you ever had to forgive someone who betrayed you deeply? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story touched you, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to hear more stories about overcoming life's darkest moments. And if you know someone struggling with gambling addiction or elder abuse, please share this story. Sometimes knowing others have survived similar pain can be the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening to my journey. May you find strength in your own trials and wisdom in your pain. Until next time, remember that even in our darkest moments, redemption remains possible for those brave enough to seek it.